This episode of Bill Swerski's Sports Talk Chicago is brought to you by the Rockford Ice Hogs. Hockey returns to the BMO Saturday, October 11th. Make sure to get your tickets at icehogs.com.
On this here episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago, we got the Bears giving an early Christmas gift to the Seahawks. The general manager of the Cubs stopping by to say hi. Konerko, he's got his last trip to New York. Lucky guy. And an ingrate leaving the Blackhawks. So grab yourself an ice cold one and a Polish sausage and park your keister in your French room and listen to Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
I'm starting 9 dickers.
I'm starting 9 dickers.
All right. Sounds like we need to make a side bet.
Starts with a C, ends with an O, and in the middle is a K.
I think his hair follicles cure malaria.
Ladies and gentlemen, the answer was the Bears.
Coach Ditka's hair could single-handedly cure our dependence on foreign oil.
Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears. He's a merciful Dick.
The Bears.
The Bears. The Bulls.
Go, Cubs, go! Go, Cubs, go!
The Bulls. The Bulls. All right.
Hey, please, this is a family show, my friend. No cursing.
Yeah, that kind of language, it belongs in the gutter, the speakeasy, and Coach Ditka's press conference.
You know,
Hey there, and welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your host, Sean, and we've got the Oh No, the Sky is Falling Chicago Bears episode. We're going to start off with the Chicago Bears, and as a special treat, we're going to have a certain general manager of the Chicago Cubs stopping by, so that'll be really awesome. But I really do want to talk about the Bears. This game, I told you all when they won the first 2 games that I'm not going to look at this too much on either side. I'm not going to say, oh my God, they look so awesome, or oh my God, they look so terrible. I'm just not going to do that because this is preseason. Everybody's playing, base offenses, base defenses. They're just trying to go out there and put some pads on some people. Everything is really, for the most part, generated by what's in the practices. They just want to see what things they have to work on in the rest of training camp before the season actually starts. So when they look really good, that's all fine and great, but it's sometimes when you have a really bad game like they did against the Seahawks when you're really going to see some dramatic changes, and you're really going to see what you need to work on, and it makes sure that nobody's complacent come season time, because when the season starts, then you can't make these mistakes. With that, I'm going to go through some of the things I saw, and I guess the first thing I want to say is that the backup quarterback position has already been determined, and as I suspected last week, it's Jimmy Clausen. Jimmy Clausen is the new backup quarterback for the Chicago Bears, and Jordan Palmer has been cut. I really thought Jordan Palmer looked great going in, and then once I saw the first game, I saw that Jordan Palmer really looked stiff. And I know statistically they looked really similar attempts, similar completions, similar everything. But the problem is that Jordan Palmer looks like a statue in the backfield. He makes the Manning brothers look mobile and agile. And that's really sad, because if that offensive line has some sort of breaks in it, or the pocket collapses a little bit, he just goes down. And if you lose your quarterback, you can't have that. Jimmy Clausen at least brings some semblance of mobility, and that's what separated the two of them. So best of luck, Jordan Palmer. Hopefully you can find another job. If not, I see some coaching in your future. And I'm sure if something happens to Jay Cutler, that they're going to re-sign Jordan Palmer to be the backup because he knows the system. And I'm guessing, don't quote me on this is nothing I've seen in the reports, but just judging on the way they're trying to build their roster and carry some guys. I think they're going to go with only 2 quarterbacks on the active roster, and they're going to put David Fales as one of their 10 guys on the practice squad. Fairly certain of that, but that's just speculation at this point. So you have the backup quarterback position is already over. You've got a few more cuts before the season starts. Adrian Wilson is gone. Michael Ford is gone. That was a little bit of a surprise going into the season, but after I saw what I saw in practice and the way that they were using him in the games, I'm not surprised Michael Ford is gone. The only thing that surprised me is that he was so in the doghouse that even his special teams return abilities, with how bad the returns have been so far, that they weren't even going to attempt to utilize him and carry him on the roster. So Michael Ford gone. Gandy is gone. Nate Collins is gone, which is a surprise. I really had him as one of my defensive linemen that they were going to carry on the roster, but unfortunately they felt otherwise. So I'm going to guess that they're only going to carry 4 legitimate defensive tackles with Ratliff, Paya, Will Sutton, and Ego Ferguson, and then have some of those hybrid defensive ends like Lamar Houston and Willie Young switch inside a little bit if they need a little bit of a deeper rotation. Who else? Greg Hurd is gone. Kofi Hughes is gone. Offensive tackle Joe Long is gone. Cornerbacks Derikus Purdy and Peyton Thompson are gone. And then Jordan Palmer is gone. So they're going to need to make 5 more cuts by Tuesday at 3 o'clock to make the roster cuts that are mandated by the NFL on Tuesday. I'm going to go through what I saw in the plays, and then we're going to cut in with a little bit of some of the post-game press conferences by Mark Trestman and Jay Cutler. So right from the get-go, poor kick coverage. Special teams looked atrocious. They looked bad on kick and punt returns and kick and punt coverages. Kelvin Hayden had some everybody seemed to have giving him way too much room on Percy Harvin. I get he's fast, but they had no game plan for him. Sure, he's a fast guy, but he's not Jerry Rice. He's not Terrell Owens. He's not somebody that should be beating you single-handedly, and he really did beat the Bears pretty good. Kelvin Hayden had a hard time covering him. So on that first drive, Kelvin Hayden had a really bad coverage on Percy Harvin. Then there was a big run play where it was Jay Ratliff was blocked out, and that's really surprising because he's played really well. He just got blocked out, and his hole was wide open. The touchdown, Houston had a bad contain. McClellan had a bad tackle. Jennings didn't come up. Overall, though, in that drive, Lamar Houston and the defensive line looked pretty good. I think Houston would have got a sack had there not been a holding on the play. So there was some pluses to take away from that. On the Bears' first possession, Michael Spurlock looked slow on the return. Michael Ola had the false start on 3rd down. Brandon Marshall had a drop pass. Cutler missed a throw. Alshon Jeffrey dropped a sure touchdown. So that was miscues, all costing the Bears points on that one. Then on the second possession for Seattle, the Bears didn't look so bad on that screen pass. Then DJ Williams got burned by the tight end. He had no business being out there in coverage, and as much as he's been really good overall, he's looking like a liability out there. As bad as John Bostic has been, DJ Williams hasn't looked that great either. Then there was the encroachment on Ratliff. Tillman fell down on a play. The sack by Willie Young, which was a nice play. It was nice to see Willie Young finally complete a sack. The late hit by Briggs, which is just really stupid. And I'm going to get to the linebacker play in a little bit. Briggs missed another tackle. Ryan Mundy had a great play. And then Briggs beat again for the touchdown. And, Jermaine Kearse has been wide open this whole time. Then Bears decided to bring in Darius Raynaud, who was a new pickup for them that week. He had an 18-yard return, looked mundane on it. Josh Morgan had a nice catch, and he's really looking like he's going to step up and be that third wide receiver. Jeffrey had a nice run after the catch. And then there was the bad pass by Jay Cutler, and luckily Marshall defended it, or otherwise it would have been a touchdown. So that's a little bit worrisome. Is Jay Cutler just having two brain farts in this game? One was that play, and the other one was the interception. And I have a feeling that just, in his brain, he's just like, what, we're just getting beat, and he took him out of the game. Mundy played well until he got hurt. Jennings had another poor coverage on Harvin. Conti had 2 really good hits, and then he had 2 really bad plays, and then got concussed. Tillman looked really old out there. Kadeem Carey came in, and he had a nice run. Santonio Holmes looked actually pretty comfortable out there for how limited he's been playing in the past. The overturned fumble by Alshon Jeffrey. I mean, I'm just going on. These are my notes, but that's enough with my notes. I'm just going to go to some of my thoughts, though. Is we had really weak linebacker play, and that's really sad to think about, because last year part of the poor defensive or the linebacker play and the defensive back play stemmed from the injuries on the offensive line and the defensive ends not being able to get any pressure. So the defensive tackles hurt, defensive ends not getting pressure, which precipitated the linebackers having to be in coverage longer or having to step up and take on offensive linemen on runs, and defensive backs having to cover longer. And it all just kind of trickles down is when you can't get pressure on the quarterback or you can't stop the run with your front four. So I assumed that with a healthy front four and an improved front four, that the linebacker play would get better and subsequently the defensive backs would play better. But this linebackers, especially, and considering that you have Lance Briggs coming back healthy and not nursing that injury, DJ Williams being healthy, and then competition for that third linebacker spot. But really, you have Lance Briggs looking like he aged 5 years since that injury. He's not looking good. He's a late hit. He's not getting to plays, not wrapping up on tackles, just not looking good. He's looking slow. I'm hoping this is just shaking the rust off, but he's on the wrong side of 30, and the Bears really have to consider that he's not a viable option, and this is probably going to be his last year as a Chicago Bear. Then you have DJ Williams, who's starting to look in the same position where he's missing tackles. He's getting beat badly in coverage. John Bostic, who's very athletic and fast, and he has the speed and ability to cover these guys, but he just seems lost out there. If you could somehow combine the football IQ of DJ Williams and put it in John Bostic's brain, you'd have a good linebacker. And Shea McClellan, he's got a few plays in him that he looks really good, and then he just looks lost out there sometimes and just missing tackles. So this linebacking core is really going to have to improve if they expect to be anything but sub-mediocre. Penalties really hurt the Bears. They just, too many dumb penalties. There was the one on Marshall that cost him a touchdown, the one Michael Ola that cost him a first down. There was just too many penalties, and they're going to have to, if they're going to beat these top-notch teams like Seattle, they can't have these stupid penalties. They can't have them. Seattle didn't have those penalties, so if you're Chicago, you can't do that. Drops. You're sure you're going to drop a few here and there, but when you have Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey, they can't drop passes, especially Alshon Jeffrey cough when you drop one that would have been a touchdown. You just can't do that. These guys really have to just concentrate and be in the game and really come down with these plays. They have to if they expect to do anything this season, because the offense is going to have to carry the defense. Then only one run in the whole first drive, and that drive was a good drive, that first drive by the Bears, and they had one run play. And I understand that you have such a good pass offense and you've got a really good quarterback and your offensive line is pass blocking like crazy. I mean, that defensive line of Seattle, they were wreaking havoc on quarterbacks last year, and they barely touched Jay Cutler. So you have him all day to throw, and you've got a lot of weapons where you've got Alshon Jeffrey, Brandon Marshall, Matt Forte coming out of the backfield for some catches. You got Martellus Bennett. You've got some guys to catch the ball. So you're really tempted to keep throwing the ball. And sure, you could do the Bill Belichick school of it doesn't matter, run run pass balance because you're just going to do whatever it is to win the game. And if you have to run 47 times in a row or pass 47 times in a row, that's what you're going to do to win. The Bears are going to have to be like everybody else and have some semblance of balance in the offense in order to keep defenses honest. So they're, as much as they've struggled last season and up to this point in the preseason with the run offense, they're going to have to keep running the ball. You've got Matt Forte, you've got a good offensive line, holes are going to open, and they did open a little bit against Seattle. They just didn't take those opportunities, and they didn't run the ball very much. When you have a lead going into the fourth quarter, especially with a defense was really bad last year and is a little suspect this year, is you're going to have to run off time and you're going to have to run the ball in order to do that. So fourth quarter, if you have a lead, you're going to need to run that ball. So better start now, better get used to it. And run blocking did look much better this game, and which is impressive because they couldn't do it against Jacksonville, but then they were able to do it against Seattle, who statistically had the best defense in a season ever for a team. So, they're fresh off a Super Bowl, fresh off being the best defense in the history of football, statistically, and you were able to run on them. So that has to be a positive. O'Donnell, he had a bunch of punts that went inside the 20, but then he had a couple that had no hang time at all. There was like 3.5 second hang times. So he's going to have to really be more consistent because the Bears, once it gets a little bit of winter, he's going to have to make sure that he's punting. He's not in Miami. He's going to have to punt in the cold. He's going to have to punt consistently, and he's going to have some good punt returners that he's going to have to kick to, like the guy from Minnesota. But the nice thing is you saw him run down the guy from Seattle and catch him from behind and make that shoestring tackle. That was really nice. I told you before, that guy Mega Punt is athletic. He is an athletic beast, and that's part of the reason why they kept him over Tress Way. But he does have to get more consistent, and I think he's going to be a good one because I can see what he can do. He just needs to be a little more consistent when he does it. Special teams of the Bears, atrocious. They are awful, and that's something that's really concerning. People can be concerned about the defense. They can be concerned about, this, that, and the other. But the special teams not gelling, that's a little bit of A, coaching, and B, personnel turnover, because you can't switch up and bring in a new defense or a special teams coordinator and switch up and take all of your best guys off, get rid of them, and bring in all new guys on your special teams squad and expect to keep playing a good special teams. It's not going to happen, guys. Absolutely not going to happen. So what they need to do is get consistency, and they need these guys to really be playing hard. And anybody that's not starting is going to be having to play special teams and play it well. And that's part of the reason that Adrian Wilson got cut. It wasn't because he wasn't playing that well. It's that he's 35 years old. He's not going to contribute on special teams. And if he's not starting, he's got to be contributing in there. Willie Young looked really good, as did Austin Lane. And so it's nice to see some of these younger defensive ends come in with Jared Allen not playing and actually get some pressure. So I'm not that worried about the defensive line. I'm worried about the linebackers and the defensive backs. Ryan Mundy, I thought he looked really good. It would have been nice to see him play more of the game, but he got that laceration. They took him out for safety. It would have been nice to see Kyle Fuller playing, but he's still nursing that ankle injury, because I think he's going to solidify their corners a little bit better, because it's going to shift everyone over. You're going to be able to put him on a faster, younger, more athletic wide receiver, and then shift everybody over. So you're not going to have Keldon Hayden having to cover somebody that's good. Thank God. Had a couple injuries. Fiametta had a hammy. Conti had a concussion. Mundy had a face laceration. I don't know the extent of Conti's injury yet, but he did look like he was out there to play. Let's see. Some cuts. Rempel got cut. Tressway got cut. They brought in Peyton Thomas, the cornerback, and promptly cut him. And then they signed Darius Reynaud to play special teams. So it looks like Darius Reynaud and Sonoris Perry are the best options so far at this kick return thing. They're the only ones that haven't looked terrible. Flipping through my notes, you can probably hear my pages. Overall, I was not that impressed by too much of the Bears. The offense was able to move the ball against that great defense, so that was good. But too many penalties, too many older guys looking slow. The Kadeem Carey looked okay. So it's starting to shape up as far as what the roster is going to look like. It's starting to be a lot more clear. I don't think there's any more surprises coming our way. I think we've already done the surprises. So look for David Fales to get moved to the 10-man practice squad with Cutler and Clausen to be your quarterbacks. I'm just looking at, it's kind of funny, seeing what the cuts were, and then going back from after the second game against Jacksonville, I made up a depth chart of what I thought was going to be, and I already had Michael Ford out. I'm not going to be surprised if Fiametta doesn't make it with his hamstring, be nagging, and I'm looking at Forte, Drone, Carey, and Lynch to make the squad. And if Lynch doesn't make it, look for him to be on the practice squad. I think they have plans for him. Bennett, Mulligan, Rosario as your tight ends. Marshall, Jeffrey, definitely makers. Spurlock, Morgan really stepped up and he looked really good. He's looking like he's going to be the number 3 because from what I'm reading, Marquise Wilson, even though he looked great, he's going to be off for longer than I thought. I figured he'd miss like the first 3 or 4 games, but they're talking that he might miss the first half of the season with his collarbone injury, which is a little bit scary. But Josh Morgan really stepped up, and Santonio Holmes, the new guy they brought in, looked actually reasonably comfortable learning that new offense and coming in. He didn't look like he had lost too many steps, so actually a little bit impressed with that. I had figured on them keeping 4 defensive ends and 5 defensive tackles, but they cut Nate Collins, so I'm expecting it the other way around. 5 defensive ends, 4 defensive tackles. So Ratliff, Pius, Sutton, Ferguson, and then Jared Allen, Lamar Houston, Willie Young, Austin Lane, and Trevor Scott, I think are going to be the 5 defensive ends. And so it's really starting to shape up. There's not too many surprises. I figured that the 4 safeties might be Wilson, Mundy, Vereen, and McCray. But that fourth safety spot is going to be a little bit of a surprise now that they cut Wilson. Definitely going to be Mundy, Vereen, McCray. Is it going to be Chris Conti making that 4? So let's listen to what Jay Cutler and Coach Mark Trestman have to say about the game.
Yeah, I think we need to look at it early on, what happened early on to kind of put us in the hole. We had a few mishaps. I thought the offensive line played well, handled their front 4, handled some of their blitzes. Offensively they were rolling pretty good, so we kind of had to play catch up and said some things early on that set us back that we need to clean up. It's the same play they picked off 2 plays later, so they made the correction. Anytime you go out there early on and it doesn't go the way that you want it, you're gonna be a little bit surprised. But at the end of the day, we're not going to lose our confidence offensively. I thought the guys handled themselves well. We were never shell-shocked out there. I thought we handled the noise well. We got to our checks in a reasonable time. We just missed a few big plays out there that I think could have changed the game for us.
Well, I think one of the things, Jeff, is been down this road before, and I told the team that. I've been in these environments where, I've been on a team that lost 4 in a row and was in a championship game. So I think we got to take it all in perspective, and I think our team does. I think we're humble enough to know that we've got work to do, that what we saw out there is correctable, but we've got to clean up our football in all 3 phases. We've got to do that, and I think the guys will see that they can. We got to clean it up from this game. We got to look at this game as it was. We went on the road. We didn't start fast. We allowed the home team to take this game downhill at us, and we couldn't respond offensively by finishing drives. And then we couldn't get the returns to a point where we were ever on a short field other than later in the game. So it's a great opportunity for us to look at the game segment-wise, make corrections, and then again, collectively, how three phases of football are tied together when you go on the road and try to win a game in this kind of environment, because it's something we're going to have to do through the season and early on in the season.
So all that's left in the preseason is we have one more game against Cleveland, and that's going to be Thursday night. Don't look for the starters to play more, if they play at all, for more than one series. It's going to be the make or break for those last couple of spots. Who's basically what you're going to be looking at is special teams. That's going to be the only thing where they're really competing out there. Is you're going to want to watch and see how the special teams guys look, because those are going to be the jobs that are won and lost, and those are going to be the guys that make or break a roster. It's not going to be for that last wide receiver spot or that last safety spot or that last cornerback spot, linebacker spot. It's not going to be who's going to come in there and play. It's going to be it's not going to be who's going to come in there and play during offense defense. It's not going to be how great of a catch you make or how great of an interception you made against their fourth string quarterback. It's going to be how you play on special teams, because your special team starters are going to be against their special team starters, and that's going to be where you won and lost your job. So look for that on Thursday. Other than that, if you want to see Johnny Football play, that you're not going to see much in that last preseason game. It's kind of it's one that's really terrible to watch, honestly, and I'm a huge football fan. So if that's what you're going to watch on Thursday, make sure just to watch it for the special teams. That's all you're really going to take away from that. David Fales is probably going to play a lot if you are interested in seeing him. But that's about it for the Bears. We're going to have more next week. We're going to have a special guest next week with us to discuss the Bears, which will be nice because we'll have more of a season preview then at that point, because we'll expect to know our final roster. So on to the Chicago Cubs. I've been really excited to talk about Javier Baez. We've talked about him being the savior. We've talked about him being, the next coming, blah, blah, blah. But Javier Baez has two stats right now that are just absolutely mind-melting. The first one I'm sure you already know is he strikes out almost 42% of the times he goes to bat. So that means like 4 out of every 10 times, just a shade under half of the times he goes at bat, he strikes out. He's the first rookie, I think, ever to have 2 4 strikeout games in his first 10 games as a pro. That's something that really needs to change. And I think the Jed and Theo, that's something they are going to work on. But I think that's something they just sort of want to see how he progresses on his own and then work on it, because the Cubs really aren't going anywhere. They're not going to make the playoffs, so there's no sense in trying to change him up now. I think you just want to see what you're going to see, and then come spring training, work on a few things. And so he's just got an astronomical strikeout rate. He's striking out once every 2.39 at bats. That's really terrible. That's like historic bad. That might be the worst strikeout rate ever for a player. But and then on the other hand, sure, his career is only like 2 months old, but he's on pace right now to hit a home run once every 12.3 at bats. If you want to know how amazing that is, that puts him all time as number 3 for a career, behind Mark McGwire and Babe Ruth, ahead of Barry Bonds and Ted Williams and some of these other all-time greats. He will be, right now he is at a 1 home run every 12.3 at bats. That, if you look at this, Barry Bonds had a home run once every 12.92 at bats. The only 2 that were better, Mark McGwire at 10.61 and Babe Ruth at 11.76. So the guy is just either striking out or home running, and he's doing both at historic paces. So I don't know what we're going to expect long term from Javi Baez, but you never know what you're going to get with this guy, because he's either going to clobber it and hit it out of the park, or he's going to look stupid and striking out. In either way, he looks exciting doing it. So I mean, it's a little bit exciting because he's he's the future. This is who we've been banking on. And what else do we have? We have Edwin Jackson going to the DL with a right lat strain, which is good because he's been atrocious this year with a 6-14 record and over a 6 ERA. He's so bad he could be in the White Sox bullpen. Which is the sad thing is I was reading a quote from him, and he said, "When I take the field, I feel like I'm the best pitcher on the field," which I'm going to take that in some sort of context, is that when he's on the field, that most likely he's the only pitcher on the field, unless he's facing the pitcher who's batting. So, of course, he's going to be a better pitcher than an outfielder or a shortstop or whoever's batting for the other team, except if the pitcher's batting. But he's of course he's going to be the best pitcher on the field, but I think he's taking it as when he goes out there, he's really good. So I think he's trying to say he's confident even though he's awful. And then he said, "I still have a lot to prove to the fans of Chicago." Yeah, you do. You just took a $50-some million contract and you've been atrocious. I mean, I can't even describe how bad he is. So it's just if you look at his 57 starts with the Cubs since he signed his contract, he's 14-32 with a 5.47 ERA. A 5.47 ERA over 2 seasons. That's bad, and he's still got 2 years, $22 million left. So I just don't even know what to do. And the one interesting thing I saw is that the Cubs, before the non-waiver trade deadline, is the Cubs had been secretly trying to trade him to Atlanta for B.J. Upton. So that was an interesting trade because it's two guys that have big contracts left. B.J. Upton's got a 5-year deal with $75 million. He signed through 2017. So he's got several years left on his deal, and what's he batting right now? 206, 9 home runs in 120 games. So he's not doing well either. So do you do that? Do you give up pitching for potential good hitting? I mean, I don't know. Upton's never had, since 2008, he hasn't had a good batting average, but at least he hit some home runs. So do you make that trade? Ultimately didn't, but it's a sneak preview of something ahead. At least somebody's willing to take Edwin Jackson. Let's see. When Edwin Jackson went to the minors, went to the DL, they brought up Zach Roskop, left-handed reliever from AAA. Some guys that could fill his rotation spot would be Jacob Turner, Felix Dubrant, and Dan Straley, who they brought over from Boston and the A's, respectively. I think we're going to have some mix-ups in the roster and the 5-man rotation for the Cubs coming up because everybody's auditioning for next year. They're going to see what they have, what people can do in major leagues, and they're really starting to have some guys who are starting to pitch reasonably well. It's going to give them some options for next year. Is if they do add a true number one, is how much better this can look. Because if you add a guy like Max Scherzer or John Lester, and then you make Jake Arrieta be your number 2, suddenly that makes your whole rotation a lot better when you have a legitimate all-star number 1 and then a guy who's pitching lights out for you as your number 2. Then you can move a Kyle Hendricks down to 3. Jacob Turner's pitching well for you in 2 games. He's got a 2 ERA. Wada, who's had a bunch of good starts, since bringing him up. He's a little older of a guy, but he's 4-1 with a 2.56 ERA. You've got Dallas Beeler, who could come back. He pitched okay for when he did. I mean, I know a lot of people are down on him, but I think he pitched okay. And you've got, as I said, Jacob Turner. You got Felix Dobrand, Dan Straley, who are guys that you could, potentially do. You've got Travis Wood, who has pitched well until this year. If you try to put him maybe as a back-end guy, 4 and 5 starter, you kind of see what you have. So they're trying to see what holes they have to fill coming into next season. This is really auditions for next year. So then going through the Cubs week, they have the crazy rain out with the Giants. So the game was called after like an 80-hour delay, and it was like 1:30 in the morning, and they finally called the game. Cubs win 2-0. And the first time I think in the history of my life there was a petition, or the San Francisco Giants, they complained and they got it overturned, where they went and suspended the game instead of calling it, and they had to replay the rest of the game. And I didn't stay up to watch the whole thing because I had work early the next day, but I went and rewatched the grounds crew trying to pull the tarp over the field, and it was atrocious. It was terrible. All I could think about was if you sped that up and played the Benny Hill music over it, you would have a hilarious YouTube video. And looking back on it and watching it again, I was just cracking up. I'm like, what happened? And I think it was a combination of things. Is apparently the Cubs are pulling a cheap move where they are cutting people's hours as to not have to pay them health benefits under the Affordable Care Act by the president. So they've cut hours. So they were at a skeleton crew, and then suddenly, instead of being a light rain, it basically came down like hurricane type rains, monsoon rains. And these guys were trying to pull the tarp out with a skeleton crew, and when the rain came down so heavy, the tarp just got heavy and they couldn't pull it. So they had to basically pull it all the way back to get the water off and then re-pull it. And by that time, the field had just flooded, and they kept putting the drying agent, and checking it every couple of, every 30, 40 minutes, and it just was not being dry enough to play a game. So apparently the way the rules are is if they have a machine that pulls the tarp off onto the field and it malfunctions, then they have to suspend the game rather than end it. But since it was actual human beings doing it, there's no rule for that. So the umpires made the call and they said, we're going to cancel the game. But since it was such, a cluster, that it was such a major mistake, that baseball said, no, we're going to finish playing the game. Luckily, the Cubs end up winning. So you had Rizzo with a home run and Wada with another quality start. So that was, that was a good move there. So there was, I felt bad for the Giants that they had to deal with that, but it sucked that the Cubs had to go out there and potentially lose another game. Luckily, they ended up winning. So they ended up taking 2 or 3 from the Mets, losing 2 or 3 to the San Francisco Giants, with Edwin Jackson having another stinker. Then they go back and they win. They sweep the Baltimore Orioles, which is pretty impressive because Baltimore's got a really good squad on their hands. On Friday, they beat the Orioles 4-1 with Jake Arrieta beating his old team, and we're gonna ask Jed Hoyer, about that game. Baez has his 6th home run, and then the Saturday game, Cubs won 7-2 against Baltimore. And Kyle Hendricks had a little bit of a rough game, 2 innings pitched, gave up 2 runs. Then there was a really long rain delay. They didn't bring him back, which I sort of see, because you can't have a guy pitching 2 innings and then suddenly go sit cold for a while and go back out because they're worried about him throwing his arm out. So they brought in Grimm, and he pitched 3.5 more innings. So you had 2 guys kind of acting as one starter. Baez has another home run, bringing him up to 7. So that ended, not being able to go more innings because of the rain delay cost Kyle Hendricks his what would have been his 7th consecutive quality start, hopefully. And then Sunday, today, the Cubs beat Baltimore 2-1. Wada had a 6 1/3, giving up 1 hit only, which was a home run to Stephen Pierce, and Alcantara had another home run. So really, the Cubs are starting to piece some wins together. As I was telling Gary, that I really think that the Cubs, after the trade deadline, is going to end up better record than Boston, because Boston just not too far off from a World Series win, and they're stinking it up now, and the Cubs are already moved ahead of them, and they're only 1 game behind the White Sox. So really the Cubs are actually playing rather decently. You know, they're 6-4 in their last 10, and they just came off sweeping the Orioles, and you know, they had the game or the series against San Francisco where they lost 2 or 3, but then they won 2 or 3 against the Mets. So they've won 2 out of their last 3 series, and that's the pace that they can keep winning at, and they're going to actually be pretty decent. So with that, let's welcome to Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago, General Manager of the Chicago Cubs, Jed Hoyer. Thanks so much, Jed, for being on the show.
Anytime. How you guys doing?
So the first question I want to ask is about the project players that you've brought in, the low-risk, high-reward guys like Jake Arrieta and Jacob Turner. Who gets the credit for their success?
Sure. Really, that's Chris Bosio. He's been outstanding with us, and you know, the best thing is he likes the challenges we've given him. You know, I think we've gone out and acquired, you know, guys like, you know, Feldman, who are coming off down years, Jake Arrieta, who was struggling, and now we've given him a couple other guys that haven't really pitched up to their potential, and Felix Doubront and Jacob Turner, and he likes the challenge. And you know, all these guys have talent. They've all shown at different times that they can pitch well in the big leagues, and you know, sometimes it's another pitch, sometimes it's a delivery tweak. Sometimes it's just confidence and being in a place that you know really wants you. And you know, I think you see that a lot in the big leagues when guys change organizations. I think there is something to be said for a new voice, a new place. And sometimes when you've struggled, you know that everyone's sort of disappointed in you, and going to a new environment can really help a guy.
You've brought up several guys so far this year, some young guys like Arizmendi, Alcantara, and Javier Baez. Have you been disappointed at all in these guys and their at-bats and their fielding so far? Anything?
No, it's probably exactly what we thought. I mean, a big part of why we brought these guys up when we did bring them up was to allow them to have their struggles, to learn, and then take that into the off season. So I think we expected some games where they you know, wow us with their talent, and you know, we win some exciting, fun games that way. And then we expected some games where they really struggle, and some stretches where they struggle. And you know, the jump from AAA to the big leagues is it's so big anyway, and I think it might be as difficult now as it's ever been in baseball because of the way people use their bullpens. You know, you're not facing a starting pitcher, you know, 4 times in the game. You're probably getting matched up against multiple times with guys that are throwing in the mid to upper 90s. And so it's going to take time for these guys to adjust. And, you know, both these guys have had their issues adjusting, and even in the minor leagues to new levels, and then they figured it out. So, you know, giving Alcantara and Baez some time right now to figure that stuff out will help them next year. They show their talent almost on a daily basis, but at the same time, they've also show where they can improve, you know, very often as well.
Now that the trade deadline is over and you have time to reflect about it a little bit, do you regret any decision you did or didn't make at the trade deadline? Any of the deadline moves that you either decided to not pull the trigger on, or that you did pull the trigger on that you may be regretful about?
Well, I think you can never have enough pitching. I think that is really true. You know, I think those deals in general are really difficult to assess because what you can't do is you can't go back in time and play a season over. You know, obviously the A's have struggled a little bit since the deadline offensively. You know, but what we don't know is, was that going to happen anyway? You know, that may have had nothing to do with Cespedes, you know, being traded. It may have been something that was inevitable given that they were rolling for the whole season. Now, obviously, you know, when history is written, they're gonna say, you know, they're just gonna use the results, and that makes a lot of sense. But I do think that's why it is very difficult. I know when I was in Boston in 2004, probably the year we made the most aggressive move when we traded Nomar to get better defense. We really didn't take off until maybe like August 15th or in that area. We kind of muddled around for about 2 weeks and struggled. And, you know, people forget that because when we did catch fire, we really, you know, took off. But, you know, I think that, you know, it wouldn't be surprising to me at all if those teams took a little bit of time to gel and then took off again. So they're hard to evaluate. And I just respect those GMs for really being aggressive and looking to win. I think our environment now is much less aggressive than it was, 10 years ago at the deadline. I think people are hold on to their prospects more, and it's really refreshing to see what happened at the deadline this year with some teams really going after it and really wanting to win.
With Samarjan Hamel gone to Oakland and Edwin Jackson now hurt, do you plan to bring up some new faces to try to fill out this rotation?
Yeah, I think we will. I think that there's a good chance we'll go with some extra guys in September. We're still working on exactly what the rotation will look like, but I think September, when you're not in a pennant race, obviously you have to respect the pennant race and make sure you're running out major league players to play against contenders. But at the same time, it gives us a chance to lengthen out our rotation a little bit and maybe give guys a little bit of extra rest. It also gives us a chance to look at some guys. We're going to have some tough roster decisions this winter, and we want to make those decisions with as much information as possible. And September should be a good chance for us to take a look at those guys.
Well, thanks so much for being on the show, General Manager Jed Hoyer, and good luck with the rest of the season. And thanks again for being on the show.
Thanks, guys.
So that's going to do it for the Cubs. Let's switch gears and talk about the White Sox. Gary's not here with us today. He's our resident White Sox super fan. I'm much more of a Cubs fan, so I'm just going to bring up a few points. Jose Abreu had another home run. He got 33 on the season, and the guy's just if it wasn't for Mike Trout, would be the MVP. He's batting .308 with a 964 OPS, 33 home runs, 94 RBIs. The guy's just everything you would have hoped he'd be and more. Then you got Gordon Beckham got traded, and I know a lot of White Sox fans had a lot of high hopes for him, and he's just the guy could field like nobody's business, but he just never could. He could just never put it together at the plate and be what you wanted him to be and what he flashed, some of the good things that he flashed during his first year up in the majors. I think this could be a good trade for him. Is he could be a really good change of scenery guy, like some of the Cubs players they brought over, like Jacob Turner and Jake Arrieta, who seemingly were good talents that just kind of didn't live up to their potential, and you move them to another facility, another team, and suddenly they're able to play up to their potential. And hopefully for Gordon Beckham's sake, he's a guy that that happens to, where he gets to another team and he starts hitting better and hitting up to his potential, especially when he's with a really good Angels team. Is hopefully the team around him can help pick him up. And then the last thing is Paulie Konerko. We are getting dangerously close to his last couple games as a Chicago White Sox and as a White Sox player and as a professional baseball player. And it's kind of funny is when Derek Jeter has been going around every time he's played last game in a city, they've had a special presentation and given him a gift and wished him well. And Paul Konerko really hasn't been getting that, and he's a guy that's been a pro's pro, and he's been a really good player in this league, and he's on his last bit of the season and last bit of his career, and he's really not getting that treatment. I can only think of the Cubs. The Cubs did something for him when he came up there and played on the north side, which was nice. But that's a hometown crowd basically. But then the Yankees actually did something classy, and they stepped up, and Derek Jeter greeted him, and they gave him home plate signed by the team. I thought that was actually something nice. I mean, it's a weird gift. Is why does a professional baseball player want an autograph from a team that he didn't play for? But still, it was a really nice gesture, and hopefully some of these other teams in the last few weeks of the season step up and start saying, hey, this guy has had a really good career, and this is the last we're going to see him. Let's at least do something to honor the guy. Hopefully they do that, because that's what would be classy. And then we don't have too much Blackhawks news. We're going to switch over to the Blackhawks, but there is something I want to talk about that I've been speaking about a little bit the last few weeks. It's official, Kevin Hayes is gone. He's left. He went and signed with the New York Rangers. And, basically the Blackhawks drafted him in 2010, and then he went and played in college. So they controlled his rights all through the time he was in college, and then once he left college, they had a certain amount of time to sign him. But it was pretty clear from the get-go that he was never going to sign with the Blackhawks. His brother, Jimmy Hayes, was somebody that they had on their roster that they traded to get for Chris Versteeg back. So the family felt that Jimmy never got his rightful due coming up and playing on the Blackhawks roster, the NHL roster. So Kevin Hayes, I think, felt a little bit like that was going to happen to him and he wasn't going to get a fair shake in Chicago. But I think this actually would have been a good time for him, because you have to be really smart when you're coming into the league. Is if a team is young and everyone signed a long contracts and playing well, you're not going to make the roster. But when you have aging veterans with bigger contracts and younger guys starting to come due in their contracts, and like the Blackhawks are, you're going to be butting up against salary cap issues. You're going to have to start cycling younger guys up sooner rather than later. So it's with a team like the Blackhawks, there's going to be some blocks for a while, but the salary cap's going to be your friend if you're a younger guy. So you're going to have to usher out some older, higher paid guys to bring in some younger players. And right now they're in the position to start having to bring up some younger players, because they're, with the new Corey Crawford contract going into effect and the new Kane and Taves contract starting next year. They're playing on their last bit of their deal, the last year of their deal this coming season. So then next year when they start, they're really going to have some cap problems. And, so a guy like Hayes could have stepped up and had a real opportunity to play on the NHL roster, but he chose not to do that. So Stan Bowman had something to say about it. Is he came out with the statement, "We offered Kevin what we believed was a generous and fair contract. Unfortunately, he felt it was at the best interest to become a free agent. We are looking forward to the compensatory draft pick we are receiving and are focused on the excitement surrounding the start of training camp next month." That, if nothing else, is him feeling slapped in the face. Is they're looking forward to the compensatory pick. Basically, they lost the 24th overall pick and are getting the 54th overall pick. They're losing 30 spots. That's basically a whole round later. You can't be looking forward to that. It's basically, I think what he's saying is, F that guy, we're done, we're moving on, and we're going to take what we can get. And Kevin Hayes had some bad form on that one. Sure, he felt they did his brother dirty, but you got to go in there and do what's best for you. And if he thinks that the Rangers are going to be the best spot for him, then if he's going to do a team dirty, then that's what he's going to have to do. But he's going to have to live with the consequences of that. And so that's about it. I mean, we have the Blackhawks training camp starting soon. In a couple weeks, I am going to the family fest outing, or whatever the Bears call it, the Family Fest, or whatever the Blackhawks call it. Their opening training camp practice in a couple of Mondays. So I'll be stepping there and seeing what they have. And then also a lot more Rockford Ice Hogs games, because we're going to be covering the Ice Hogs. So let's use that as a segue to talk about our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. Hockey returns to the BMO Saturday, October 11th. Check out icehogs.com for your season tickets now. So with that, let's move over to the last team we're going to be talking about, is the Chicago Bulls. Is Derrick Rose, some soreness in that knee, but he is going to go on and play for Team USA. So it's a little bit worrisome after the last two games not playing so hot, even though in the training camp and the practices, everyone was talking about how great he looked, and suddenly he became back on the MVP radar. And then he had two mediocre games and some knee soreness, and now he's looking a little bit questionable again. So I think it's been really good to have Derrick Rose play for Team USA, because as much as he didn't want to admit it and talked about how healthy he was, is you are not going to be healthy until you're playing, and you need to play on that knee to get it back to where it needs to be. So he had to take this time off. He really had to take the time off in the season and then start playing again for Team USA, because you can't be doing this once the season starts. You can't have the whole first quarter of your season be you working through your injury and getting back in your sea legs and getting back into your knee and back into playing shape. You can't do that. You need to play for Team USA, and this has been a blessing in disguise, is that he's got to go out there and play actual games against actual teams. So when he comes to the Bulls, he's beating the rust off of his knee, and he's going to have to, he's going to have played through his soreness and played through his scared of his knee being hurt again and get back to playing basketball. And then the last thing I want to talk about is we got Dougie McBuckets suddenly becoming Dougie McCrooner. Did the seventh inning stretch of the Cubs game this week, and he is not going to be taking anybody's job as a singer anytime soon. So with that, we're going to end the show with Dougie McBuckets' rendition of "Take Me Out to the Ball Game." Thanks for checking out the show. You can, if you want to have your comments read on the air, definitely go to swerskisports.com and either have, it's got our email address, it's got our Twitter handle, everything to get a hold of us. We've also got a hotline. So if you want your comments read on the air, give us a call at 847-261-4146, and you can leave a message that we can play on the air. So whether good, bad, ugly, about the Bears, about us, whatever you want to talk about is, you can leave your comment and we'll play it on the air. Or it's got our email address, and it's also got how you can listen to the show, but you probably already know because you're listening. And you can check us out at swerskisports.com. You can check us out at facebook.com/swerskisports and at swerskisports on Twitter. Thanks for checking us out, and until next time, bear down.
A 1, a 2, a 3. Take me out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jack. I don't care if I never get back, so just root for the. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game. Let's get some runs, Cubbies!
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van. And she looks like...
Remember, New Yorkers, smoking crack is not legal on the plains. Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears!
Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.